This is Bucharest, the capital of Romania. Bucharest is a lesser-known city located in Eastern Europe. The nickname of the city is Little Paris, or Paris of the East. However, if you look at some of the streets of today's Bucharest, Paris is not the first city that comes to mind. But back in the day, Bucharest was genuinely a beautiful city. This is how Bucharest looked in the early 20th century. It had nice boulevards, lively streets and beautiful architecture. Nowadays everything looks different. Interestingly, if you ask any Romanian which city to visit, few would say Bucharest. Most will recommend cities like Brașov, Sibiu, Timișoara, or maybe Constanța because of the sea. If you ask someone from Bucharest, they probably recommend some nice place to visit, but will still have an overall negative view of the city. Some would even say that Bucharest is an ugly city. But I'm here to convince you that's not really true. Bucharest is a city that has a lot of problems, but is still a nice city. Most people would attribute the degradation of the city's image to the destruction of the old buildings during communism. And while it is true that a lot of the nicer buildings were destroyed, I would say that this is not the main problem. In my opinion, the main problem with Bucharest is not architectural but urbanistic. But first, let's take a quick look at the history of the city. Bucharest was first mentioned in the historical records in 1459. Originally a small fortress town on the bank of the Dumbovița River, it gradually developed into a significant political and economical center. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Bucharest entered a period of remarkable growth and modernization. The city underwent rapid urban development, influenced by Western European trends, and gained the nickname Little Paris due to its elegant architecture inspired by French architecture, wide boulevards, and vibrant cultural life. It looked like an average European capital of its time, maybe not as developed but clearly rapidly developing. Following the Second World War, Bucharest came under Soviet influence, and by 1947 Romania had become a communist republic. In the decades that followed, Bucharest underwent massive changes. Most people think that during that time most of the historic neighborhoods were demolished to make way for uniform socialist apartment blocks, but that's not entirely true. Most of the new housing was built outside of the historic city that previously had mostly single-family houses. Some buildings were destroyed for political reasons, but most of the historic fabric of Bucharest remains. A turning point came in 1977 when a powerful earthquake struck the city. Measuring 7.4 on the Richter scale, the quake caused widespread destruction and claimed over 1,500 lives. Many historic buildings were severely damaged or lost entirely. In the aftermath, reconstruction efforts coincided with Ceausescu's plans for an extensive urban redesign. One of the most ambitious and controversial projects of the communist period was the construction of the Palace of the Parliament. Conceived by Ceausescu in the 1980s as part of the new civic center, the colossal building required the demolition of entire districts, including churches, monasteries and homes. However, the even bigger problem with this project was the giant network of roads. The most important of these roads is the Unirii Boulevard. This boulevard is also connected to other roads that are more like city highways. Those roads, in my opinion, did more damage to the city than any other demolition project during the Ceausescu. Those roads unfortunately defines Bucharest today. It's an extremely car-dependent city, at least for European standard. Whenever you search for images for Bucharest, you get probably image of the parliament and the surrounding. But the city still has a lot of nice places to visit, but they are literally hidden behind these large buildings. If you look at the map of the historical center, you can see an interesting pattern. Along the main roads you can find these large buildings, mostly residential or mixed-use buildings. There's nothing wrong with them, we need those buildings. And even though a lot of people dislike them, they are actually pretty decent housing. Behind them you can find a mix of buildings, many of which are actually old houses and villas. The streets are much more chaotic compared to the straight roads built later. One of the main reasons those large boulevards were built is that at the time, just like in almost all large cities, architects and urban planners believed streets should be designed for drivers. Bucharest's public transport isn't bad. There's a subway, trams, trolley buses, And plenty of buses. There are a few bike lanes too, but not nearly enough. There's a plan for a complex network of bike lanes. The map and the renders look promising, and I hope it will be built without much compromises. But what the city really needs are more walkable areas. Currently, there aren't many walkable areas. Most of them are in the historic center, but they're mainly aimed at tourists. There should be walkable areas throughout the city, accessible to all residents. Even touristy places have a lot of problems. This is the Victoriei Road. It's one of the best preserved streets in Bucharest and an important tourist destination. But it's still a road open to cars despite literally decades of pressure from the residents to make it a pedestrian street. The only thing they actually achieved is to make it pedestrian during weekends, which is fine, but if the cars can survive during weekend without this specific street, I'm pretty sure they can survive without even during weekdays. This street isn't even that important for cars. They can take other routes. There's a quasi-highway just a few meters to the east. There's also a bike line on the street, and there's not many parking lots, which is okay. But again, this place would look way nicer if it would be entirely pedestrian. Just like I said at the beginning, one of the main criticisms of Bucharest is that there's not many nice old buildings, and the ones that exist are not maintained. But Bucharest still have a lot of old buildings, and making street more pedestrian friendly can actually help maintain them. Let's take for example these two buildings at the entrance of the Victoriei Street. The architecture is stunning, but they look neglected. And there's a lot of buildings like this. Why are they looking like this? Well, there's a lot of reasons. Buildings like this are a bit more expensive to repair in Bucharest because some need also extra enforcement against possible future earthquake. But one of the reasons why they look like this are cars. Making a place car dependent can kill any potential business and also make undesirable to live there. Also, cars can contribute to degradation of buildings. Beside the constant vibration that can accelerate buildings' destruction, the constant pollution will turn buildings dark. And most importantly, cars make places undesirable, therefore no one will invest here. There's also a lot of streets nearby that have so much potential, but they are ruined by cars. This place would look way nicer without those parking lots. I also want to talk about the squares of Bucharest. Those are not really squares, and I don't mean they are not shaped as a square. I mean they're not places designed for people to be in as a pedestrian, the way a square should be. Look at the Gogolnicianu Square. Places like this are really bad. This doesn't work as a roundabout, neither as a normal road. There's a few parking spots there in those awkward places, in an otherwise really nice place. And there's a lot of squares like this. If the locals want to improve the city, those places should be the first one to remake. There should be a master plan, similar to the bike lane one, that includes multiple places like this for improvement. A quick way to turn a place like this into a nice place is to restrict cars on the two sides of the main road. We can make this place mostly pedestrian by making these two roads accessible only for the people who live here. It would be nice to do the same for this road next to the river as well, although this will need to be a different project. Similarly, these two roads should be restricted too. And by removing the parking spaces here, pedestrians can enjoy a nice pedestrian area. We can use the previously mentioned squares as main points of interest. In some areas, we could extend the existing public transport infrastructure to reach or pass near them. Some streets could be converted into pedestrian zones. This would also rehabilitate the old buildings in the area, as more businesses might be encouraged to invest there. Probably the most important of these places should be Piața Gării de Nord, or the Northern Station Square. Even though it doesn't look very pleasant and the Romanian trains are not the best, it's still one of the most visited places in the city. It's unacceptable for such an important place to be so car-centric. In the area there is also a hospital, residential areas, and a lot of these nice buildings that are about to collapse. We pay a lot of money to go to western cities to drink coffee on those fancy cafes, thinking how nice would be to have something similar at home, while buildings that looks just like that are decaying here. All of this can be attributed to cars. How can we fix that? Just close most unnecessary roads. This way we can create a nice and welcoming place and better integrate existing public transportation. By restricting cars, way more people would access this park as well, since those island-type parks are not really efficient. Parks should be connected more seamlessly into pedestrian zones or other green spaces. The same principle can be used all over the city. Bucharest has a lot of green spaces. Unfortunately, a lot of them are surrounded by roads and not many people visit them. If we connect the main green areas and green parks with pedestrian areas, we can have this network of green belts that would look awesome, and the city would have something that is unique, and people from outside of center would benefit as well. A lot of residents wish to rebuild old destroyed buildings to improve the city's image. That's understandable. However, improving the city's urbanism would do way more to improve the city image, and it would also make it more livable. If the local authorities would restrict the cars without putting any fancy pavement or new green spaces, it will still do way more to make streets more pleasant than any other renovation project. That's because urbanism is far more important in the perceived beauty of a city that most people realize. In short, Bucharest is not an ugly city at all. It has the potential to become just as nice as any other great capital in Europe, but for that it needs to become less car dependent, as cars slowly destroying the historic fabric of the city, making new developments hostile to pedestrians. The future of the city looks brighter now that there are a lot of projects to restrict cars and improve alternative modes of transportation. Still, it will take a lot of time for locals, and even more for the politicians to change their way of thinking about living in a city. Thank you for watching my first video. I hope I would have a chance to cover more cities in the future. Have a nice day. Bye bye.